Hi, James. Are you still there?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining across the globe. Welcome everybody to this webinar today. It's the CBDA web info session powered and hosted by BNET Learning. I can see a number of participants already joining. We have about 23 online, and I want to say thank you for taking the time today to join this information session. My name is James Adebayo, and I'll be your anchor and host for this webinar. And it promises to be indeed an informative session today. Just a few housekeeping items. All attendees are muted today just to have a little bit of control and ensure that people can join without any difficulty. So please, we would ask that everybody be muted so that we can have our presenters present without being distracted. Also, we want to encourage everyone on the call today, if you're joining us for the first time, this is actually the third of our information sessions. The first we had in January was on our Scrum Bootcamp. And then in February, we had our information session on the CBDA, on the CBAP rather. And today we have our information session on the CBDA Bootcamp. So I will encourage you, if you have not subscribed to our mailing list, on our mailing list for our newsletters, please go to our website, www.bnetlearning.com. That is bnetlearning.com, and subscribe for our newsletter so that you are up to date with all of our information session coming up later this year. And finally, on the housekeeping items, we would like to know where you're joining us from, your name, city, and country you're joining from, and probably also let us know what you currently do. Are you a business analyst? Are you a project manager? So we would like you to please engage with us by chat. Please put in the chat box your name, where you're joining us from, and also your current profession, whatever that looks like. We have the chat box available for questions and answers, for responses, and for feedback and comment. Please feel free to send a chat. Let us know where you're joining us from, your name, city, and your profession. As we go on in this webinar, I would like to quickly introduce the agenda for today. The agenda for today is quite straightforward, but I'll have a few introductions. We do have two very knowledgeable speakers today, and I'm extremely excited to have these two knowledgeable data analysts on this webinar today. And so we'll have a quick introduction of our two speakers, and then we'll go right into the presentation. The presentation itself will cover, amongst many, business data analytics. What is that? What is business data analytics? And then we go to guide to business data analytics. How can we help and guide you through the journey as a data analyst? And then we speak on some important nuances around certification and becoming certified as a data analyst. And we're looking at that from the lens of the IIBA CBDA certification. And then, of course, we want to speak to why you should become CBDA certified. Going along on the agenda, we'll have one of the speakers speak to our forthcoming CBDA Fundamental Bootcamp. It's starting off in April, and we'll speak to what that bootcamp will look like. And we definitely encourage you to join that bootcamp as you power through and achieve your business data certification. And then we'll go right into exploring job-related opportunities within the business data analysis sector. And we'll wrap up hopefully on top of the hour with question and answer. Please feel free, if you have questions already, comment, please put all of those in the chat box. I don't want to take much of our time today. I really just want to go right into it. and quickly introduce our two speakers. The first of whom is Damola Folari. Damola Folari is not just a business analyst, but also a business data analyst. Damola started off his business analysis journey quite a number of years back, and he's continued to do so much within that space. Needless to say that Damola is one of our senior trainers for BNet Learning, and it's always a pleasure to have him join and present on this topic. Damola is a risk manager, is a technology enthusiast, and is a solid entrepreneur. He is currently the senior BA and lead agile product owner with Zenith Bank, and previously holds the same role within Standard Bank of Nigeria. Damola is an IIBA CBDA certified data analyst. So he's not just talking from experience, which is very important, but he's also talking from a lens of a certified CBDA. On the personal side, Damola loves music and is a master in learning new things. Moving along to the second presenter for today, Olumide Michael Oyalola. Olumide is a data nerd. Olumide loves data, and I'm not surprised. Olumide holds a master's degree in industrial mathematics and statistics. Olumide started off his data journey even right from the university days, and continued to do great exploit within this field. He was a data scientist at the eHealth African System and a data professional process miner. He's currently a business information manager at Longbridge Technologies, and he enjoys teaching statistics both as an undergraduate and as a data analyst within a number of organizations. On the personal side, Olumide enjoys listening to music, reading, and of course, like myself, Olumide loves watching football. These are our two presenters today, and I would like to bring in Damola to kick this off, and also to say to everyone on this call, thank you for joining, and I assure you that you will have a great time joining the CBDA information session today. Olumide, over to you. Olumide and Damola, over to you. Are we starting from Damola?
Sure, James.
Okay.
I'll be starting off, right? So I just want to share my screen. Okay, guys, welcome to this information session. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, like James has said. Just give me a couple of minutes. I need to share my slide, but I think I'm having some issues. Great. If you just go down.
So Damola, I can go ahead and share the screen and just let me know where you want to go from. Okay.
So we're done with introductions. I don't think we need to still go over that. So I'm welcome. Just to say welcome to this info session. I hope it will be very interactive. We, the faculty, here at Binet Learning would like to have an interactive session and just walk you through business data analytics from a global perspective and from an IBA perspective, IBA being International Institute of Business Analysis. James, just go further down. But before I go ahead, so like James has said, I have my co-facilitator today in person of Olumide. At some point, I'll be handing over to him to give us insight into what the bootcamp really entails. But before we start, I would just want to play a video that sort of summarizes, yeah, okay, James, yeah, that sort of summarizes what we're going to be discussing. So please pay rapt attention. James, you can go ahead. Okay, thank you so much for playing that video. I see that it buffered the beat, but I mean that's fine. But I see that we could actually see the content because the purpose of playing that video was for us to just see for a head start what IB is thinking when CBDA was introduced. So thanks James for that. Do you want to bring up the presentation slides? Okay, cool. Just go one step behind. Just go one step backward. Go one step backward. Okay, yeah, thanks, James. Okay, so I think we've done the welcome, right? But before I kick on, I see that I mean the participants for this info session, we have a bit of diversity there. I see a couple of persons from Nigeria. I see people joining all the way from Canada. I'm in Lagos, Nigeria, right? But I see people joining all the way from Canada. I see people joining from North Carolina, Fairfax, in US. I think we have a bit of diversity there, having participants across 2 continents there. Okay, so feel free, like James has said, drop your questions. At some point, we're going to take time off to just address the questions. And I see the question that somebody had asked earlier. Let me see who's that person. Gabriela. we're going to get to that, Gabriela. You were asking about the requirement to start off in the career. What does it take to finish it? What are the fees? Again, after the session, we'll be having a bit of, we'll be having some information passed on to you, right? Where you get a lot of details around the fees for the training and all that. But this is just an information session to get us started on the right path, right? But yeah, as much as possible, we'll address a couple of what you've asked here on the call. On the call. Okay, so I would like to just just start from the basics, without going into a bit, just without taking us through some complex verbose, route, because I really want this info session to be very interactive, right? Again, I know that we have a limitation around time, but as much as possible, I want it to be very interactive. So I'm going to start with this. What is business data analytics? Or simply say, what is data analytics? So I'll put it in a very simple word. We're going to see IIBA's definition of business data analytics, which will also align to whatever I want to say now. But basically, right, it speaks to having the right set of competencies, just capability, or having the right right level of understanding, right, to make data sets, generate valuable insight from data sets that, one, would help business decision making, two, that will lead to better business outcomes. So just put it that way. Have the right set of competencies, the right set of skills, have an understanding of the right tools to use that would make you generate valuable insights from data sets that would lead to better decision making, right? Business decision making, basically, and eventually lead to better business outcomes, right? Next slide, James. So, take that, Andy. We'll see the definition from IIB perspective. Don't be put back. It still speaks to the same thing. If you had, I know that the video sort of buffered a bit, but this was a slide that was taken directly from the video, right? And IIB was just trying to say, in specific time, that behind every effective decision making, there's always a provision of data and metrics. Above all, there's great analysis. The truth is, data won't do anything for itself. Let's be very realistic. There's a lot of data that's been generated today. You don't want to imagine the data generated on a daily basis from social media feed, from transactions being done, from text messages, people are loading pictures, posting pictures, and we're in the digital world, right? And it's crazy, but that's what big data is really catering for, right? But we have all those data. They're not going to do anything for themselves. We'll not be able to generate any form of valuable insight where we don't bring analysis on it. So there's a whole conversation about having the data, right? And that's really just having your descriptive data, right? But there's another conversation of being able to analyze those data to see patterns, to see trends that can lead to insights that we would use to take decisions. And then you can be well assured that decisions, when decisions are data driven, then we know that it is void of any form of biases. We'll also talk about biases as we progress, the type of biases that come from people making decisions rather than allowing data to make those decisions. So next slide. Okay, so just to do a bit of introduction, like we said, this info session, basically is just to give us a good head start about business data analytics, right, and the certification around it. So like I said, there are two perspectives that we'll be talking about largely. We're talking about the global perspective, taking a value perspective there, and then we're going to be talking about the data analytics from an IIB perspective, because and that is quite certification focused, right? So IIB is International Institute of Business Analysis. I think I said that earlier. IIB is the foremost institution for business analysis and globally recognized, right? I would say number one. I know there are a couple of others, but IIB is globally recognized when it comes to business analysis. So IIB introduced the certification in 2019. And basically, this certification is to help professionals that already have some form of experience there, right? Right, and that's to also just pitch into what Gabriela said, Gabriela from Canada. So I know that a couple of us might be here that we're just starting off maybe our careers, we're just starting off, no experience there. Yeah, we have some certifications that we can actually pitch to you from our portfolio of training, right? We have ECBA, CCBA, and CBAP. You know, but I mean, when we engage you for that, we would actually we normally have a one-on-one where we would actually do a self-assessment and profile what is best for you. But I mean, to focus on the conversation for today, business data analytics. So the expectation from IB is that you have a bit of experience there, whether 1 year, 2 years, doesn't matter, but you have an experience, you understand business, or whatever your domain of practice is, right? And IB understands that data, I mean, we're in the digital age and data just sort of rules everything, right? If you don't have the right data set or you're not asking the right questions, you might not be able to get optimal business outcomes, right? If you don't have maybe the correct data set about your customers, you might not be able to target them rightly with the right product, right? And you would see that you might be making business outcomes, yes, but the question is it optimal? But data can actually get you there. So yeah, so CBDA is just to one, set you apart, set you out of the crowd, that you understand data, you understand data analytics, one, from the perspective of helping businesses make better decisions, two, for ensuring that optimal business outcomes are achieved. Next slide. Okay, so when I started, I gave you the simplistic definition, right? But this is an IBA definition, taking verbatim from the guide or for business data analytics, right? And it just speaks to the same thing because it talks about you having the right set of techniques, competencies, procedure to be able to perform some form of data analytics, right? That would help you generate valuable insight that would lead to better decision making. I mean, that's just what this slide speaks about. James, you can go ahead. Okay. So this slide talks to the circle. I want to talk about the circle. I mean, the expectation is for people that will be, for professionals that will be engaged with some form of data analytics, right? Or that, yeah, that would be their expectations, right? When you are carrying out data analytics, whether be it in the business space or in the personal space, I mean, whatever the domain of practice is, there's an expectation in terms of a process flow, a defined process flow. And this is just from an IB perspective, right? And I mean, it makes sense, right, from what the guide says. So everything really starts from you framing the right questions, right? Framing the questions that would attend to the problems, right? Before, I mean, like I said, what everybody has today, right? Even if you, I mean, just taking a personal view, we are all generating data. Now your age has changed from what it was last year. I mean, that's if you already had your birthday this year, right? So you can see that from even data perspective, you're moving because your age is changing. You know, you change a couple of things, peripheral things are changing around you, right? So I mean, there's some data there, but that is being kept or not. I mean, we individually were even generating data there, right? So the first thing is don't look at the data, right? Frame the right questions. When you frame the right questions, you would use those questions, right, to get the right data, and then you start to sort of carry on some form of test. You know, talking about hypothesis there. So you test: am I getting the right? Is this the right question? Does this question meet the needs of the business? Does it add any value to the organization? Is this what the organization is more concerned about, right? From a value perspective. So that is delineated within those process flow in yellow there. And then when you now get to the core of, oh, I've gotten the right data that supports, right, or that answers the questions that I have identified, then you start, you start to do some form of analysis, start to troubleshoot, you know, to see if your analysis, your models, right, are actually solving those questions. And then, when you get to the point where you think your analysis or your model works fine, you start to communicate the insight generated from those model or from those analysis there to stakeholders that are responsible for taking decisions, right? That decision-making stakeholders, right? Start to communicate that. So in there, you start to talk of stakeholder analysis, stakeholder engagement, you know, and from there, the outcome of all this process put together would actually guide your organizational level strategy for better business outcomes, right? So we're going to see how IB has prescribed this flow and how this flow just sort of dovetails into the knowledge areas, which we call domains. There are 6 domains and they are separated into 2 categories. So we have the first category, which is talking about the practice, having 5, and we have the last one, which is the 6th, which talks about the strategic perspective in terms of using the outcome from data analytics. Next slide. Okay. So when we distill everything, now we've talked about the circle, right? We've talked about what IB is thinking from a data analytic point of view, right? There are 4 major analytical perspectives, right? In terms of you just understanding the different journeys that data sets would go through. So we have the first one there, which is really descriptive data, which I said at the beginning is what we all have, right? I mean, data is always there, but I mean, data is not going to do anything by itself. So, and descriptive data there talks about historical data, right? So we need to actually perform some form of analysis, right? Do some form of hypothesis testing there. And then when you start to do that, now when you start to layer some form of analysis on the data that you have, right? You've advanced that to diagnostic. Now you start to do some form of diagnosis there, checking your data, maybe categorizing your data. For example, I have my customer data. Are you trying to segment them to, maybe you're trying to segment by demographics. So, or where are my customers located? Or you're trying to segment them by sex, or which of them are males, which of them are females, or you're trying to segment them by age. You're trying to create different age brackets. When you start to do that, you're doing some form of analysis, right? You're trying to do some form of prepping, and that's why we say that, oh, the outputs of that will say you have a diagnostic data right there because some form of analysis has been performed. Now, if you've done your diagnosis well, and this is really iterative, it's recursive. It doesn't mean that, oh, diagnosis needs to stop before we start to have some form of predictive data. But I mean, if you've done some form of analysis, which we call diagnostic, you start to see patterns, you start to see trends, and then you can start to predict outcomes. So you start to see that, oh, this my product is well suited for male within certain demographics that are within certain age brackets. That is what they prefer. So you start to have predictive outcomes there. So you can predict the guys, the customers that would actually buy your product in the market, right? I mean, a lot of analytics is layered on there. You see how the journey, you see how we've taken, you see the data journey, how we've taken it from descriptive to diagnostic to predictive. Now, there's also a perspective that talks of prescriptive, which is a bit further than predictive there. And prescriptive is actually the high end, right, in terms of data analytics, where, and today, I know a lot of us would have had some form of experience. Maybe you've gone to Amazon Prime or you're using Amazon there, you have an issue on the product that you've just purchased. You go on Amazon to complain, you see the chatbot there. You will be chatting with the robot. Like, I mean, essentially, you're not interfacing with a woman until the robot, in terms of predictive analytics that is layered on that robot there, it's when the decision trees have been maxed out that it hands over to a woman being there or a personnel there. So that's what we call predictive, where we can actually have some predictive outcomes automated, right, and layered with a lot of call it machine learning, or I mean artificial intelligence and all that, right? We start to see that we are getting to predictive, right? So you are really automating outcomes of your data. So I mean, when you can see patterns, you can make predictions there. You know the guys that will buy your product in the market. Then you have predictive data. When you extend that and start to automate it, right? Then you say you are making set of prescriptive data analytics. Yeah. Okay, correct. I mean, just from a value perspective, right? Because it doesn't make sense that we're having all this conversation. And I mean, the next question is, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me in the market? Like I said, the CBDA is going to really distinguish you, is going to set you apart from other professionals, right, in the market. Because data really cuts across everything. We're going to see a bit of career map now, and I mean, you're going to agree with me that data is very critical to almost everything that's happening now. I mean, in the age that we have. So there's a report there that LinkedIn released for 2020, just talking about most in-demand ad skills, and he noted analytical reasoning as part of most in-demand skill for 2020, right? The funny thing is, this same skill was noted as part of in-demand ad skills for 2019 and 2018, I think, right? So I mean, it's going to be there, and it's going to. I mean, organizations will be investing more. I think I saw a report from, I think, Udemy or Coursera. I can't really recall now, but those are the two platforms I use quite frequently. Saying that the projected investment from organizations globally into data analytics is going to amount to $7.1 billion by 2022, right? So, I mean, organizations now know that we cannot actually rely on smart people to make decisions, because again, like I said, there are a lot of biases there when we rely solely on people to make decisions. Next slide. Okay, so part of the conversation, also from an IB perspective, and which makes sense, and just how IB has sort of come up with the guide and the framework for business data analytics, is looking at it from two perspectives, the two domain of practice. So we have business analysis and we have data analytics, and then just having an amalgamation there. IB sees it that business data analytics facilitates the process of turning raw data into information needed to guide informed decision making, by extension, better business outcomes, right? I mean, just to really disabuse our mind doesn't mean that if your current domain of practice is not within data analytics or business analysis, is not relevant. No, it's quite relevant. And we're going to see that very soon down the line. Next slide. Okay, so before we just go on to the next slide, I would like to just post a question there. Let me get your feedback, and also just read through the question chat there. So what data issues or challenges have you experienced recently or in previous time?
Damola, we do have a question from as you provide insight further. We have a question from Olushola Bengal Lofi, and thank you, Olushola, for the question. His question is, what is inferential analysis? Inferential analysis, what is that?
So inferential analysis.
Okay, can I take the lead on that?
Okay, yes, please.
All right, so it's actually inferential analysis, and it is coined from inferential statistics, right? So from a statistic point of view, you have distributed statistics, which is about generalization of or summarization of your data sets, or summarization of the information that you have at hand. Say, for instance, you have your sales record over time in the past 5-10 years, and you're computing some basic statistics, trying to know what has been our average sales volume, what has been the average customer that you have over the years. So that is basically display statistics. However, when you want to take it further to say, based on information that is available, what generalization can we make? Then we talk about inferential statistics. Now, talking about analytics, inferential statistics is in tandem with predictive analytics, because basically what you're doing is that you are using the information at hand to make a future look, to take a future look, or to take a generalization. So that is just it. So it is a bit of semantic between statistics as a course of study and also the field of analytics as we have it today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olumide. I mean, I couldn't have done better justice. Thank you for that. Yeah. So just what Olumide is saying in summary, that look at it as predictive analytics. Right. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so I asked the question, and I think that I just posted it here to everyone. It will be good to just get your feedback. And when I say what data issues or challenges have you had or have you experienced, I'm not talking of data like data sets, because people start to think at a very complex level. So for example, you were working on a project, you needed certain information, you couldn't get it, and it just gave there was a bit of adverse impact there. Maybe a customer request came through, there were some certain organizational assets you needed to access, maybe certain documentations, maybe regulatory requirements, you needed to check it to be sure, you couldn't get it at the time, but yeah, we know that it's an asset that exists, but you couldn't get that information, so it can be that simple. Which just it would be good to get feedback on that as we proceed. So James, next slide. Okay, so just talking very quickly to the structural content of CBDA from an IBA perspective, right? Like I said, there are two views there. There's a practitioner view and there's the organizational view, and I'll just quickly distill it for you. The practice view has 5 domains, right? And the domains just really talks to you identifying the right questions, sourcing your data that would sort of just meet those questions, and interpreting the outcome of those data, communicating it, right, and ensuring that the decision makers are actually able to use it. Because that's where value really meets. That's where I would say tire meets the road. That's where the value points are being connected. So if you've done everything, for example, you've framed the right questions, you've sourced the right data for that question, right, or for those questions, you've sort of done a bit of interpretation, generated reports, done a lot of stakeholder engagement there, and then you are not able to communicate it to guide decision making. You've really not added any value, because at the end of the day, whatever you've done from a data analytics, it needs to help. It needs to be tied directly to business outcomes, right? And it needs to help better decision making or optimal decision making process. So that's really what the practice view is about. The organizational view just has one process and one domain, right? It just talks to everything you've done from practice. How do we get the output of that, right? And ensure that it guides organizational strategy or company strategy, if you may, right? And then we start to look at data governance. So those are abstracted level use cases for that data. How do we ensure that our data are properly being maintained? How do we ensure that our data sets are actually accessible, right? And they're accessible to the privileged users. Then we'll start to also talk of talent strategy, what should we be looking out for in terms of resourcing people, getting the right access, the right tools, right? And so those are really strategic view, right? But it's just one domain. I'm just talking about the tax on that domain now. So when you take that one domain view from the one organizational domain view, and you add it to the 5 from the practice, then we have 6 in all. So so the framework basically has 6 domain, right? That really talks to data analytics. Next slide, yeah. So I wouldn't spend more time on this. This is just what I just said. So we have the practice there. So this schematics, right, just shows you the practice view. So you have, you really start up with framing the right questions, right? I like to use a good scenario. I don't know if many of us know this. It's an MBA 101 use case, right? The Pepsi bottling issue, right? And I know that a couple of us might, but I'll just quickly use that as a framing use case. So at the time, Coca-Cola was really selling well, and this is really long ago. Coca-Cola was doing well in the market, and Pepsi was really looking at what can we do to compete properly and also sort of just match up with what Coca-Cola was getting in terms of revenue in the market. So I think the first thing that the CEO thought about was, oh, why can't we? Because I think Pepsi was always in can and Coca-Cola was in bottle. So they thought that, oh, that is the reason why customers were buying Coca-Cola. So they went on the journey to change the bottle, right, or the container for Pepsi. But again, the result didn't come in, right? It took a while. Pepsi was not doing well. The CEO was actually ousted by the board. The new CEO came on board, and they had to go back to frame the questions. That use case is very interesting because what Pepsi did right after a long years of just not getting right in the market was going back to their descriptive data. What are our current customers saying? And they found out immediately that customers wanted, they wanted the content, like the Pepsi, right? They wanted something that could cater for a larger size or a bigger volume of Pepsi that could cater for maybe parties or a family size. I know that's what, when they went to the retailers, those were data they were getting that they never looked at, right? And that's what descriptive data does to you, like the voice of the customer. So, I mean, to tell you, for people that know the case, you will know that Pepsi was the first uh, carbonated drink producer that went on, the family size bottle type containers, right? And that just changed the game for Pepsi. They found out that people, their customers started buying more of that because it was cheaper, it was bigger. I mean, people could take it, and take it and take it and take it over and over. Coca-Cola had to go on that journey, but that worked out for Pepsi. That was because they were looking at their descriptive data, which was at one point was ignored, right? So that, I mean, just framing the right questions, right? Sometimes all of the times, not sometimes now, I correct myself, getting the right questions, right, and then getting the right data that would just key into that question. It's amazing, the type of outputs you can get. So I mean, just this is just a schematic that just talks about the practice view. Next slide. Right. So this is another, let's say, delineation of the practice view and how the outcomes come to organizational level to support strategy from a business analytics point of view. I think what is interesting here is that this shows the guide to organizational level strategy that we've been talking about and how it adds up to the practice view. And if you guys noted, for the guys that went through the video, you will see the video was just talking about the five domain of practice, right? Yeah, but yeah, the sixth one talks about the strategy level. Okay, go ahead. Okay, next slide. Okay, so at this point, let me just take the question and I'll hand over to my co-facilitator in the person of Olumide. But I see a question from Adewale Wolabi. He says, as a supply chain and data system analyst in oil and gas company for 12 years, but now laid off, I'm sorry to hear that. What could be the way forward for me in terms of starting a consulting business? I would say that just for the context of the question, Mr. Adewale, let's have a conversation out of this session, right? I mean, there are a couple of career trajectory or career paths that you could take, right, to go into consulting. Yeah, but the first thing is that you need to distinguish yourself. You need to distinguish yourself. You need to have the right certification, right, and then have the right content there in terms of knowledge, right, for people to be able to first believe you, and then for you to be able to actually also speak to consulting correctly. So I would say, let's have a conversation out of this session. I'll be happy to chat with you and just take this going on so that we can focus on the info session. Yeah. So we'll reach out to you. Yeah, not a problem. So I'll be handing over to Olumide now to just take us through the bootcamp, right, and just talk through the bootcamp. Next slide, James.
All right. Thank you, Damola. And as we hand over to Olumide to speak on the certification in business data analytics, we just have a quick question. I know this is from an anonymous person, but we do have a question that I think is interesting to answer right away. And the question says, where do you draw the lines between a business analyst and a data scientist? Where do you draw the line? Are we saying they are one and the same? And is CBDA a professional in the middle of a business analyst and a data scientist? So that's the question we have. It's from an anonymous person. And I also encourage you guys, if you have questions, please type in the chat box, and I'm sure Lumide and Damola will be able to answer you. So to this question, where do we draw the line? Olumide and Damola, between a business analyst and a data scientist?
Okay, I'll just quickly speak to that, right? So I'll speak to you from the perspective of IIBA first of all, and I'll just take a global perspective. So from an IIBA perspective, if you go through the 5 domain of practice, that's what talks to practice, right? I told you that it's more like an amalgamation between business analysis and data analytics there. Now, if you distill it to the 5 domain of practice, the first one talks to identifying research questions, meaning framing your questions properly, sourcing your data, analyzing your data. So I'll talk to those first two: identifying the research questions, like framing the right questions, and sourcing your data. That is something that the BA can do very well, right? Because I mean, you can engage stakeholders, stakeholders, they engage people, whether external or internal, and you just sort of get the right questions, right? Frame the right questions. You can actually also source the data because that's not technical in there, right? So the expectation of CBDA is actually, if you take a team view where the BA is working with the data scientist or the data analyst, right? When you go to the third practice, which is analyze data, the BA might not be involved in that. And you will see how IBA also just speaks to that in terms of the content in the guide, where the expectation is that the BA will be working, for this domain, and I'm talking of analyze data now, the BA will be working with the data scientist, who is required to be technical, who will use data models and other technical type of tools like regression, correlation and all that, analyze the data set that's been provided by the BA, right? And then generate those insights. Now, when you go to the fourth one, which talks to interpret and report, right? The BA takes over there. I mean, while the BA and the data scientist or the data analyst, as the case may be, can actually perform some of these domains together. I mean, when you start to wear the lens, where you are trying to separate the practice, you start to see clearly what the data scientist would do in terms of practice and what the BA would do. So when you talk of interpret and report results, yes, that would be a BA's responsibility. The data scientist can be involved in that. When you also talk to using the results to sort of guide business decision making, now in terms of engaging C-suite executives or the guys in strategy, the guys that are actually making the decision, the BA will be largely involved in that than the technical guy. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Damola.
Not a problem.
And I'll keep encouraging you guys. If you have questions, please put it in the chat box, and I'm sure Damola Olumide would provide answers as we progress in this session. So, Olumide, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Damola. Thank you, James. And hello, participants from wherever you're joining. Now, just before I run with what I have, the 1 or 2 minutes that I have to speak on this, I quickly want to add to what Damola said. As regards the last question, I will give a scenario, and I'll also talk about the gap that actually happened and why we think this certification would have helped in closing the gap. Basically, CBDA is going to help to bring the BA closer to data scientists at the end of the day, because the data scientist is very technical, is looking at techniques and models and predict analytics, as the case may be, that he needs to use to answer some specific questions. However, if the BA in his or her own part has not been able to do justice in some certain area, then it's going to cause some confusion. Let me give an instance. Some times ago, I think that's some years back, I was on a project to actually do a sort of study for the country, that's Nigeria, on having sustainability in the production of some staple food, rice and wheat. And we started off, the BA in question actually did some primary questioning to understand what the stakeholders actually want to see, which will actually help us to know the direction to take. However, after doing all of that, the BA came up with just I think about 4 or 5 point data sets. By 4 or 5 point data sets, I mean just 4 rows of data, and it was like, this is data set available for us to do the analysis, right? And that is actually a gap in itself, because you can't do your analysis with that sort of data set. You need a more robust data set to actually do a sustainable work. So that actually speaks to the fact that this certification will actually help to bridge the gap that normally exists between the two individuals, a scientist and also the BA. Now, going to my presentation, for the bootcamp, is going to be for 6 weekends. However, for the first weekend, which is going to be Saturday and a Sunday, basically we'll be looking at techniques. Earlier on, when we were talking about the definition of business data analysis from the IBA perspective, the techniques were actually echoed, they were actually strongly mentioned. So that means they are very, very essential. So basically, we'll be looking at those techniques that have been identified by IBA and when to use them, what are their best use cases. We look at that from the theoretical point of view on the first day. And on the second day, we try to go more practical by trying to see how well we can actually work around data. When you have a particular form of data, what are the best ways in which you can visualize in case you want to go around visualization. We will talk about predictive modeling, which one is admissible for what data set. How do you frame your question? How do we ensure that you communicate the insight from your data appropriately? Those will run for the first weekend, and thereafter, Damola will continue with the IBA model in terms of CBDA. So that is going to be the flow of the section for the bootcamp. Now, in addition, we also have an analytic class, which is a fundamental class, which actually runs on its own. However, what this actually enables is that it's actually a full-fledged analytics class that is going to take us further beyond what we'll be experimenting in this bootcamp. So in terms of journey, I would say that after even going through this, if you still want to further into analytics, that is also an option that you can take. And also talking about the tools and the tools that I'll be using, that technical tool we'll be using, apart from the laptop or desktop as the case may be, that will be admissible, we'll also be making use of Microsoft Excel. That is what we'll be using basically. But for the analytics class, which is the further of this particular journey, that is going to include some other forms of tools like HAL, Tableau for visualization, or Power BI as the case may be. But for this particular class, Microsoft Excel will be used for the practical section. So that is all for me. Over to Damola and James to continue while we wait for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Olumide. Thank you for that presentation. So, like Olumide has said, yeah, the bootcamp will run for 4 weekends, right? The first 2 days, which is the first weekend, we'll be having an hands-on, right? And Olumide will take you through that. Olumide is actually very hands-on. He's a data scientist, right? And yeah, and he will take you through that. And he has also said that we have a training, right, that has been just developed for hands-on. So if you are really interested in getting hands-on, because the truth is, there's a lot of conversation around getting certified. There's another conversation around having the hands-on, being able to use the tools and techniques, right? Bringing the two together is actually very wonderful and will allow you to be able to harness the right opportunity in the market. So yeah, so we have a boot camp there for just fundamental of data analytics, which will be one for 4 full weekends and just hands-on, working on tools. But for the purpose of this CBDA certification boot camp, the first weekend will be for hands-on, so that I can give you heads up into some of the techniques. The next 3 weekends, which I'll be handling, will be directly speaking to the guide, just having a theoretical understanding and appreciation of the domains, going through some exam questions that are, just exam simulation questions that are quite similar to what you see in the exam, and also sharing my experience with you based on my experience from the exam itself and all that, and what to expect. I will guide you on that journey till you are very successful and you have the right outcomes that you are gunning for, right? So I'm looking at time and I see that, yeah, we are almost, shooting out of time. Is fine. So I mean, we decided to skip some slide because those slides just really talks to the exam, the exam. I mean, just info around the content and the exam, which we can discuss further after this info session. Should you show interest in the bootcamp, you would get all those information, right? And this slide will also be shared, right? So you would get the information. James, next. So yeah, we have a training and mentoring program where we sort of just handle professionals, just talking to our training and mentoring program, and we handle professionals where we do a one-on-one assessment. We have our facilitator within the faculty do an assessment of your skill set. So I've seen a lot of questions around skill sets, competencies. I saw a question now from Anonymous also saying that you study chemistry, education, you're not enjoying where you are right now in terms of your job. How can you get into business analysis? So, I mean, these sort of questions are well catered for in our one-on-one mentoring session where you can actually look at where you're coming from, just do a current state of where you are, and then sort of guide you and sort of just, advise you on what next to do, and then point you to the right things to be doing, right? And then take you through some of our bootcamp to get certified, take you through some of our study group. We have study groups also that we sort of have to, we sort of run to help candidates to achieve success in the exam, where you have an accountability partner, you can do peer-to-peer study there. And then we'll take you through that journey just to have the right outcome to distinguish yourself in the market. And yeah, we also, from time to time, get job opportunities from employers because they trust us, they know that we've been doing this for a while, right? And then we'll pitch that to some of the people that have also gone through our network, right, to assess some of these opportunities. So yeah, we can have this conversation after this info session. You have also said how relevant is an MBA to a successful MBA career. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I mean, there are no direct requirements for an MBA to be a successful BA, right? But one thing also, I think the lever to that feedback is as a BA, you need to get all the information, get all the knowledge that is needed. You need to be able to learn on your feet as a business analyst. So yes, getting an MBA is not a bad idea, right? It's good, it's value adding, but in terms of is it a prerequisite for success? No, the answer is no, right? Yeah.
And Damalan, we
Okay.
have a question also. We have a question also, and we didn't quite catch the name of the person because it's an anonymous attendee.
Oh, I've seen it. I didn't scroll down before. I see the next one saying, can the CBAP and CBD exam be taken simultaneously? Yes, but let me just quickly provide a bit of context there. So the CBAP is a career type certification where there are different stratas there. You are coming in, would advise you do the ECBA, which is the entry certification for business analysis. That's you don't have any experience in business analysis, you're just out of school. There's also CCSBA there, which talks to intermediate competency there, which is more like a capability certification for business analysis. So you have a bit of experience, but you're not at the expert level. You still need some form of guidance there to carry out business analysis tasks. Then we'll advise you have the CCBA, right? When you start to get to the managerial level of your business analysis career, then CBAP is well suited for you, and that puts you at the level of strategies or experts, and then you can actually navigate your way to C-suite portfolio, right? Career type journey, right? So yeah, that's the flow, but we can also have that conversation inside. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I see Tega there. Tega asking, is the bootcamp virtual or physical? It's going to be virtual. Yeah, so it's going to be virtual into the next one. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you elaborate more on that timing? Yeah, somebody saying something?
Yeah, we have another question. It says, probably also bring Olumide in here. Data sourcing can be very difficult, especially when data custodians or refuse to cooperate, with the data analyst. How do you manage or handle such issues?
Okay, let me allow Olumide to take that. I'll also chip in. I have an insight into that. Olumide, are you there?
Okay. Yes, I am. Basically, from my own point of view, or from what I've experienced, I think some difficulty come as a result of data governance, right? As an organization or as an individual that manages the data warehouse, you don't want random look or random access to your data. So you want it to come based on request, and you want the request to go to the right channel. So there are instances whereby some process and procedure have been put in place to ensure that appropriate approval are given before access can be gotten to a data set. And there are some other instances whereby data sets are not actually available. So in an instance whereby the data set is available, but it seems to be not a direct access. Yes, that could be because of the data governance layer that we put across board, which is very, very necessary. Organizations actually have it, and it's very, very necessary. But the constraints that I think it's also obvious in some instances is when the data is not actually available. I know data is actually money in itself, because and because of that, people might want to put a value around it. So that is my understanding of the question. I don't know if I actually address the question appropriately based on the sender perspective, but that's just it.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Olumide. I
you.
think that makes a lot of sense, right? And the truth is, I mean, it's good to understand some of these techniques that we've described, but I mean, you understand theoretically when it comes to practice, right? Like day-to-day practice, yeah, you start to get people issues, right? And that's where the domain of practice comes in. You know, it says um, guide to strategy, organizational strategy, right, for business analytics. I mean, there are things that you might not be able to do at your level because, I mean, you're just there trying to get better business outcomes, right? Then you might need to escalate it, right? Because if it is going to help guide business strategy, I want to believe that the persons responsible for those outcomes would actually ensure that some of these type of issues, people issues, are well addressed. Because, I mean, people issues are people issues, yeah. Just to have that.
Okay, thank you, Damola. A question more around the CBDA Bootcamp. Do you want to probably give a little bit more insight around when it's starting, and you know, when is that going to be? Every weekend? I know you did say that it's virtual and not physical classroom. Do you want to shed a little bit more light on that, please?
Yeah, so I had answered, but I think that answer just went directly to Anonymous. So the bootcamp will go for 4 weekends, like we said. It's going to be 4 hours per day, right? Because this bootcamp is actually being targeted to both candidates from Nigeria and North America and other continents. We've sort of just looked at time zoning, and we've decided that the bootcamp will run from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's 4 hours per day. I'll run for 4 weekends. So yeah, so in terms of timing, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Then run for 4 weekends, Saturdays, Sundays. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Damola. I know time is fast spent, and I want to ensure that we're respectful of people's timing. What will you know, to just sort of wrap up on the information session? What we want to do is, this is not about selling boot camp. This is about sharing information to help you determine whether you want to take your you want to start on the business analysis, data analysis journey. It's about ensuring that you have the information you need around the certification, and then going back to say, will this help my career? And of course, for those that are already at the point where they know that they need to get the certification, Binet Learning is then able to support you with the right training and with the right information that will help you to be able to achieve your certification. For those wanting to reach out to us and connect with us further on, um, we would share a link with you. It's a short, very quick short form that will have, you know, some basic information, your name, contact details, and then we can use that to set up with you a time with either Olumide, Damola, or any of our training advisors, and they can have a more tailored discussion with you on a one-on-one setup. So we have a form that you could you would see in the chat box that you can fill with a little bit of information that will really help you to have this time with Damola or with Olumide or with any of our training advisor to ask all of those questions around business data certification. All right. The other point before we shut down today is also to encourage you, if you are not following us on our various social media platforms, whether on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, please, you can subscribe, comment, and reach out to us on all of these platforms. BNet at BNet Learning. That is at BNet Learning. And for our website, again, for those that would like to ensure they stay up to date with some of our activities, and of course, for some of this information session, those ones coming up later in the year, it is www.bnetlearning.com, bnetlearning.com. Damola, to you, any final words, any perspective you want to share in 1-2 minutes before we shut down today?
Okay, so I mean, the first thing I would like to say is thank you all for your time, right? Taking our time for this info session. I'm sure that we're here to support your career journey. Thank you, James, also for hosting. I will say this on just a final note, right? That, good data and smart people doesn't equal good decision, right? Yes, we need to have smart people, but what you need is the right questions, the data that matches those questions, and then smart people to make good decisions. So I mean, just think about it. It's not the data and the people. We've moved beyond where we are looking for smart people to make decisions. We're looking for the right data to help us make the right decision. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Damola. Any final words from you, Olumide, as we shut down today? Olumide, do we have you still on the line? All right. So next steps as we shut down.
Yes, I am.
There
Thank
you
you all
are, Olumide.
participants.
Yeah. Go ahead, Olumide.
All right, thank you all for your time. We hope to get to see you in the bootcamp, and also to get to see your question as you give the necessary information in the form that is shared. Thank you all once again.
Awesome. And specific next steps is we encourage you for sure to register for the upcoming CBDA classes. And of course, if you go onto our website, you will see other trainings scheduled for 2021. We did share the form. The form is available right now in the chat. It would help you to be able to have Damola Olumide or any of our training advisor to have you go through a mentoring session when you can then determine if indeed this certification is right for you. And of course, on our website, you will have access to many free resources, our blogs, we have articles, and other resources to help you build your professional career. And of course, we want you to reach out to us for support, for questions, and for direction. Connect with us on our social media platform, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That's at BNet Learning. And I want to say finally, thank you everyone for joining this session today. Knowledge is power. And I'm sure that this time is well spent, with the knowledge required to start or to continue on your CBDA journey. We want to say thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate your time today. And to our speakers, to you, Damola, we want to say thank you. To you, Olumide, we want to say thank you. To the founder, also, John Ojuegbesa, we want to say thank you. And to the entire team at BNet Learning, thank you for putting this together. And we hope to see you all again next month, when we'll be yet presenting another very important and valuable professional certification information session. But till then, we say thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye, everyone.